In a market between $40,000 and $50,000, buyers have a number of options to choose from in the crossover segments. They can go with a full EV product like a Nissan Ariya. They can choose a hybrid model, maybe even a crossover or SUV that's sporty, dynamic, or possibly off-road worthy. But if you're someone who wants a luxury SUV, you want something that's a bit more posh, upscale, and maybe a bit more mature, now you have the 2025 Nissan Murano. Now, so far, there's a lot of buzz and excitement surrounding the Platinum trim because of what you receive at around $50,000. But today, we'll be taking a look at the SV. What does a Murano SV at just over 40 grand give you? Well, in today's video, we're gonna find out. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Nissan of Merrimack Valley in Chelmsford, Massachusetts for letting me come down here to check out the new Nissan Murano. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Nissan inventory. So as always, let's begin with pricing. For 2025 with the Nissan Murano SV, you're looking at a starting cost of just under $41,000, which really isn't too bad for a vehicle that is exhibiting some luxurious attributes here, because a lot of competitors do come in at around $45,000 that offer similar packages, amenities, and features. Now, there are a few things I want to point out here that you might want to take note of for the SV trim. For one thing, front-wheel drive does come standard, so it's the only trim that gives you front-wheel drive as an option. If you need all-wheel drive, that will tack on about $1,000 to that price tag. Then for those of you who have owned Muranos in the past, you're probably looking at this vehicle in pictures and videos thinking, wow, it looks somewhat bigger than my Murano. Well, it's actually only about 3 inches wider. So they retain the length and the height, so when you do hop into this vehicle for the first time, it won't be a foreign experience to you. In fact, you're gonna feel right at home being behind the wheel of the 2025 model. In regards to ground clearance, you're looking at right on 8.3 inches, which is more than enough to take on winter road conditions. However, one thing I have noticed here for this new Murano is that you are going to have a full paint finish for the wheel arches, and that lets you know this is not going to be an off-road worthy vehicle. So no off-road tuned suspension, and it's not going to be a direct competitor to a Honda Passport, for example, but might be a great alternative to a Mazda CX-70. Now, when you take a look at the design for this new Murano, there is a lot to digest here, because for one thing, from far away, it does look like a Nissan Ariya. Now, when you get closer to this vehicle and you see the smaller details, you're like, oh, so it's actually a full gas-powered model. Now, for those of you who do think this is a gas-powered version of an Ariya, the Murano is about 10 inches longer, so it's going to be a bit more of a practical vehicle and a more family-friendly option if you are looking for a vehicle that is going to be solely gas-powered. Now, up front, you are going to receive full LED headlights and LED daytime running lights for a classier appearance, but there are some nice elements here that I do like to see for this vehicle, such as the gloss black trim for the front grille and also that gloss black piece that runs into the headlights. Love to see that on this model. It definitely has a nice classy touch. Now, for the lower portion of the front bumper, you are going to notice some of that cladding there. So when you do take on those winter road conditions, it will deflect some of that road salt and some of that snow that might be thrown towards your vehicle. But when you take a look at the fenders and you take a look at the body lines, it does look somewhat car-like. It looks somewhat sporty, so that kind of tells you what this Murano is all about for this generation. Then as you make your way over the side profile with the SV, you are going to see 20-inch gloss black wheels, which is one major difference from last generation, because the older Murano 18s did come standard. Now you're probably thinking, wait a minute, 20-inch wheels? I'm going to notice a lot more road noise, aren't I? Well, actually, what Nissan has done to this platform and chassis, they've given you a lot more refinement and interior insulation, so you're not going to notice that too much here. And also, with the suspension being tuned for a softer driving experience, when you go over the bumps and imperfections, it is not going to be harsh at all. Matching the gloss black wheels, you are going to have gloss black side mirror caps. Now, no surprise here for a base trim for 2025, you're not going to receive turn signal indicators. However, you are going to have blind spot detection for added safety. Then as you make your way around to the back, I'm actually thoroughly impressed here with Nissan's design team, because a lot of SUVs in this market are either boxy, they're also going to be sporty in nature, and possibly reflect this price point, because for a vehicle at around $50,000 on the higher end, the Nissan Murano actually has some styling cues here that you would find out of a Lexus, Infiniti, or Acura. So you are going to have the LED taillight bar that runs the length of the rear fascia. Nice classy touch. But then also for the lower portion of the rear bumper, you have the cladding and gloss black trim, which you would typically find out of a hybrid or full EV products. So I see a lot of inspiration from the Nissan Ariya, and I have a feeling in the future the Murano is going to receive a hybrid powertrain or be electrified in some way, shape, or form, because it's just begging for it when you take a look at the design elements. And then lastly for me is the sloping roofline. Now the Murano has always had that. It's always had the rounder front and rear fascias, but I feel like Nissan doubled down on that for this new generation. And better yet, you're gonna have some gloss black trim and chrome accents that tie everything together here. This truly does look like a Lexus RX 350 for $40,000, and that is saying quite a bit here for the Nissan Murano. Also on top of that, the Murano badge is written out on the rear liftgate, and we're seeing a lot of that right now in the automotive industry. So very trendy here, very stylish, and most certainly gives the Murano that modern and futuristic appearance that you might be looking for in 2025. Under the hood for the 2025 Nissan Murano SV, we have an all-new powertrain here for this model, which is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine producing 241 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. Now before I continue on, doesn't that sound kind of familiar? Well, this is the exact same engine that is in the Infiniti QX50 and QX55. The big difference, though, is that we have a 9-speed automatic transmission. This is going to be a bit more of a pleasant vehicle to drive, no droning with that CVT in those Infiniti products, but also last generation for the Murano, it also had a CVT, but you did get that V6, so a minor sacrifice here. Now, with this model, as I mentioned before, front-wheel drive does come standard for the SV, so you have to spend about $1,000 more for that all-wheel drive system, which will be the better choice for this model if you do love up here in New England. But more importantly for this vehicle, since we are going to talk about its performance later on when we take this vehicle out for a test drive, it's all going to come down to the fuel efficiency. So with the all-wheel drive system, you are going to receive right around 21 miles per gallon in the city and 27 miles per gallon on the highway. Not the best in this segment, not the worst, but if you are looking for a vehicle that is going to be a bit more upscale and a bit more classier than your Nissan Rogue, this is going to be a nice upgrade for you between $40,000 and $50,000. Hopping inside the Nissan Murano SV we have today, we're greeted by power adjustable and heated leatherette seats for both the driver and passenger. Now, if you're looking for a driver of memory seat, you're going to have to go with the SL, and that comes in over $46,000. So keep all of this in mind. Yes, you get a long list of creature comforts and amenities that we don't have here for the SV, but that is a steep price tag to pay. Now, with the leatherette upholstery, it does feel rather premium and plush, and in fact, there's a lot of support and comfort that you don't typically find for a base trim at around $41,000. If you're going on those longer road trips, maybe you have a long commute, or you're dropping off the kids at school every single day, you're going to feel right at home being behind the wheel of this model. Also, bolstering isn't too aggressive, which is to be expected for a vehicle that doesn't exhibit sporty characteristics. But I do think, though, that for a vehicle that is starting to be a bit more luxurious, between $40,000 and $50,000, you are going to notice some of those qualities and attributes here, even for the SV. But really, though, it's all going to come down to the technology and dashboard layout, because there is so much to indulge in for this model that we didn't have last generation, and we really didn't have in other products in the Nissan lineup. So in front of you are going to have a full digital gauge cluster, which does build off of the technology that we saw for older Nissan products a few years ago. The resolution and quality is pretty good, falls right in line with Toyota, Honda, Mazda, and Chevrolet, and it is cleanly laid out. Now, one thing I think a lot of you are going to be complaining about, though, is the haptic feedback buttons on the steering wheel. We have heard that with Volkswagen before, and we're going to hear about that with Nissan as well. And on the right side of the steering wheel will be a variety of buttons that you can use to customize this layout to your liking, and also scroll through a wide range of features and information. Now, with this steering wheel, I'm not going to say it is flat bottomed, but it does have some of those attributes here, and it does feel really nice in the hands. You have aggressive 10 and 2 and firm 9 and 3 grips, and better yet, you do have paddle shifters to roll through the gears yourself for that 9-speed automatic transmission. So really cool stuff to see here. Then taking a look at the infotainment system, you are going to have a decent sized touchscreen here with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility, and you will have a wireless phone charging pad. Not bad for a vehicle at $41,000. But let's talk about this screen, because this is why we're here. This is a huge leap forward for the Nissan brand, because Nissan has always fallen behind its closest rivals in regards to technology. Now, they did make strides over the past 5 years, but this is a huge leap forward that I think makes Nissan very competitive right now with Honda, with Toyota, with Mazda, and I would also say maybe even on the higher end with some luxury manufacturers right now, because I see some elements that would be found in Alfa Romeo products. On the left side of the screen, you are going to have quick access icons to get your different menus efficiently. For your notifications, home screen, radio, Bluetooth connectivity, and then also your climate control settings. Now, like a lot of vehicles in this market, you can adjust the climate control and heated front seats from the screen, or you can do some of that on the dashboard layout here. Now, it is haptic feedback buttons, so it might actually be easier just using the screen, which I wouldn't typically say, because with the haptic feedback buttons, it will take some time to get used to. So down here, you're going to have the controls for your dual zone climate control, fan speed, also AC and front and rear defrosters, but fan direction will be solely for this infotainment system. And just like we saw for the prior generation head unit in Nissan products, this isn't going to be super in-depth. This is not going to be a direct rival to Audi's MMI user interface, what you're going to find from BMW's iDrive 9 software. But for a vehicle at around $41,000, $42,000, I think the resolution and even the intuitiveness is definitely going to be on par and might be better than some close rivals in this market. So keep all of that in mind. Then as you make your way down towards the center console, you're going to notice your volume and tuning knob here. And that's basically it. Nissan has really embraced a minimalist layout for their interior, but also you see that for the exterior, where it has that futuristic element, and we're going to see how buyers respond to this, because I think buyers are looking for that analog layout, but this is a huge step forward in regards to the design for the interior of the Murano. Now, beneath your button layout for your dual zone climate control, AC, and front and rear defrosters, you are going to have your wireless phone charging pad here with 2 USB-C inputs. Now, for the center console itself, you either like this or you don't. You are going to have, instead of a gear shift knob or lever, you're just going to have push buttons here for park, reverse, neutral, and then drive and manual. And we're seeing this from Infiniti, so we're seeing some of that trickle down to Nissan products. And actually, I like this more than what you're going to find in the Nissan Rogues. Next to that will be your drive mode selector for Sport, Standard, and Eco. Then next to that, you are going to find your auto start stop, and then your camera adjustment here, where you can change the settings. You can also adjust the brightness as well. We see this on Infiniti products, so I'm starting to notice some of the Infiniti buttons and Infiniti technology making its way to this Murano. Also, you are going to have 2 cup holders here, and obviously gloss black trim, which, yes, is going to be difficult to clean and maintain, but it does have some of this classier elements that you might be looking for here at around $41,000. Also, I do like the stitching along the center console, give you some padding when you are on those longer drives. Then for the standard storage compartment, there is plenty of room here for smaller items, maybe even a couple water bottles. So if you are going on those longer road trips or you have kids in the back, you have plenty of room to store those water bottles or maybe some tech gadgets that'll help entertain them on those longer drives. And finally, to wrap up the interior for the SV, above you are not going to receive a moonroof or panoramic moonroof that is only available on the SL and Platinum. Then for passengers in the back, they're looking at right around 36 to 37 inches of legroom, which does seem somewhat deceptive and also would seem a bit more cramped and claustrophobic than some other vehicles in this market. But that really isn't the case here, because the seat is adjusted most of the way back. It's also somewhat on a recline, and I have plenty of legroom here. But more importantly, for taller passengers, they will not be hitting their head on the headliner, even though we have that sloping roofline. You would think that having that lower roofline might play around with the overall practicality and interior space, but that just isn't the case for the SV, and that's the reason why you're going to want to go with the SV, because with the SL, you get a panoramic moonroof, and that will take away from some of that headroom. Although, one thing I think a lot of you are going to be looking for out of a vehicle of this size is that can you squeeze in a third person in the center? And you can definitely do that here with the Murano, because you don't have an aggressive center hump, which is a bit surprising for a vehicle with all-wheel drive. So this is definitely a 5-passenger vehicle overall. Now, if you want some more creature comforts and amenities, you're going to have to go with the Platinum or SL. However, with the SV, you still receive 2 center-mounted air vents, 2 USB-C inputs, and then to round out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Then making our way around to the back one more time, take a look at the rear cargo area. For the SV, you are going to receive a power liftgate. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 33 cubic feet of room, which would be on par with a lot of vehicles in this market that are sportier, have the lower roof line. And actually, one vehicle that would be a direct competitor if Nissan dropped in a hybrid powertrain would be that Crown Signia from Toyota. In fact, dimensions-wise, it's almost identical. So I think that if you are going on a road trip with the family or a significant other, you can easily store 8, 9, 10 bags of luggage back here with no issues, even though you do have that lower roof line. On top of that, you are going to notice some side pockets on both sides of the cargo area for some smaller items, maybe a couple water bottles, car detail equipment, or maybe even a first aid kit. Now, this cargo area is deceptively wide, so you can store a lot of items back here if you are someone a bit curious and a bit concerned if you are upgrading from that Nissan Rogue. Better yet, and I love to see this for vehicles of this size, on both sides of the rear cargo area, you will have quick release levers that will conveniently lower the second row seats. And when those second row seats are lowered, you're going to have right around 63 cubic feet of room. Once again, falling right in line with most competitors in this market between $40,000 and $50,000. So if practicality is what you're looking for right now and you want a taste of luxury, you're going to find that with the Nissan Murano. Lastly, and one thing I do want to point out here is that this is optional across all 3 trims for 2025. You can receive a spare tire. So if you encounter a flat on those road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. Right now, the Nissan Murano Platinum is receiving all the attention, and rightfully so, because at $50,000, you are getting an SUV that is very well equipped with the Google-based software, also heated and ventilated quilted leather seats. And you also get a vehicle that feels rather premium for its price point, where you could theoretically cross-shop it with a Lexus RX 350. But for the SV, this vehicle will define where Nissan is going to be placed at around $40,000, because at this particular price point, you could cross-shop this with a Chevrolet Blazer, Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4, and then on the higher end, you're probably looking at maybe a Mazda CX-70. But for $40,000, what you're receiving here is quite a bit. Nissan is focused primarily on the technology, but also I love this leather-wrapped steering wheel. It feels really nice in the hands, and of course your paddle shifters. With the Murano, though, it has traditionally been a luxury-focused crossover. Even last generation, you could say it was kind of blurring lines between being a mainstream Nissan and an Infiniti product. Now for 2025, they've taken it one step further, and because you no longer have that CVT, this is going to be a more enjoyable vehicle to drive on a daily basis, where you're not going to get that droning. And even though you are missing out on that V6, this Turbo 4 is rather peppy. Now, we are going to go on the highway very briefly here. I will place it in sport mode and see how this vehicle performs. But as a vehicle that is supposed to be a nice upgrade over the Nissan Rogue, maybe feel like a Nissan Pathfinder, it's definitely delivering right now within the first 5 minutes of driving this vehicle around. More importantly, being an upscale model in the lineup, interior insulation, it really isn't too bad. I mean, I am driving around 40 miles an hour, but with the larger 20-inch wheels, you would think that would create a bit more road noise, but at least currently right now, not at all. So, in sport mode, not too bad at all. Braking is pretty decent here. Steering is somewhat light, typical for a Japanese manufacturer, but very direct. Yeah, this doesn't feel as lethargic as last generation. That V6 with the CVT, you would think for a V6 it would be a bit more enjoyable, but that just wasn't the case. Now at highway speeds, the 20-inch wheels aren't too bad. Road noise isn't egregious, which is really all you could ask for. But yeah, I actually really like this generation. The Turbo 4 is pretty impressive. Also, somewhat smooth and linear power band for a turbo. Not too bad. Now obviously with its ground clearance at around 8.3 inches, it is not going to feel planted to the road. This is not a sports crossover like a lot of vehicles in this market are, but then it's also not going to be a rugged SUV like a Honda Passport. So it falls in line with some vehicles that are trying to exhibit a luxurious driving experience, and the Murano is delivering on that. This is actually a solid upgrade over that prior generation. Now let's talk about overall vision being behind the wheel of the SV, because you have a nice panoramic view. A-pillars are actually not that bad for a vehicle in this market, so I don't think you'll have any blind spots when you are approaching intersections or red lights. The side mirrors are decently sized. I can see what's in my blind spots, and also of course we have blind spot detection. And then looking out back, you can see what's directly behind you. So there's actually a good amount of vision here. And better yet, because you do have that ground clearance and with this vehicle feeling like a true SUV, you have a nice commanding feel and presence over the roadways, and that will help out with the overall safety that this vehicle is providing. Now, I will say, though, that in sport mode, that this engine does drone a bit. It does feel a bit more on edge. I do think that being in standard or normal mode would be the better way to go. But during those times when you want to get on the highway quickly, you want to enjoy some of those winding back roads, I think you can do that. Now, obviously, the suspension is tuned to be luxurious and soft primarily, so you're not going to be taking corners at a high rate of speed. But when you are just cruising around the city and suburbs, it can be fun. But ultimately, though, where the Murano is going to have a lot of value is, can it provide an upscale driving experience? Can it give you a vehicle that's not going to be slow, boring, or sedated? And on top of that, is it going to give you technology that you actually want to use on a daily basis? I think they've done that here. And we're starting to see Nissan make some huge leaps and bounds, especially with the Nissan Kicks, and now at the Murano with this full digital gauge cluster, with that infotainment system. And this would be competitive to what you have with Honda and Toyota products right now. But all in all, after this quick test drive, what we have here with the SV is actually really nice. At $41,000, this does undercut a lot of its rivals that also exhibit luxurious attributes. A lot of vehicles that are like this would come in at around $45,000. So you are saving a few grand here and there. Obviously, you are missing out on the Google built-in software, because that will be standard on the SL, and you don't get the dual-pane sunroof. But is that a major make-or-break deal? You know, I don't really think so, especially if you are coming from an older Nissan Rogue. This would feel like a sizable upgrade for sure. And on top of that, you are receiving a vehicle that feels very well refined. That was one thing that the old Murano didn't have, because even in 2021, it was a bit archaic. This feels very much in line with its close competitors. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review for the 2025 Nissan Murano SV. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.